Hey everyone, my name is Tyler, and welcome back to the St. Saviour's virtual youth group. If you haven't already, click that subscribe button and hit the bell icon so that you get notifications every time we post a new video. Thanks for joining us. If you haven't seen all of our previous videos, head to our YouTube channel, St. Saviour's Anglican Church, to see all of our previous episodes of the virtual youth group series, or check us out on Facebook, Instagram, or our church website. I'm very excited about today's episode. We have an incredibly special guest, somebody very close to me, and he's going to be sharing with us everything that he knows about today's topic: exploring Judaism. I think it's so important to talk about other religions, educate ourselves. Knowledge is power. The more we know, the more we understand the world around us. I thought it'd be really cool to explore the Jewish faith and traditions and to hear from our special guest about what being Jewish means to him. Let me introduce our special guest for today, Kevin McIntyre. Okay, hey Kevin, thanks so much for talking with me today.
Thanks for having me.
So today we're going to talk about Judaism. We're going to talk about all different aspects of it. I have a few different questions, specific questions that I want to ask, but then we're just going to have a conversation about what it means to be Jewish, about the religion, about the practices, the beliefs, a little bit of history, and just have a good time.
Fantastic.
So I think the first question I have is just what drew you to Judaism? What is it about Judaism that that you love so much and that spoke to you?
Well, that's a very good question, and it's something that I often explain to people that I can't really explain it. All I can say is it really kind of is more of a feeling than something that I can actually sort of process literally in my head. I grew up with a very strong view of God and a very specific view of what God was to me. And when I first got introduced to Judaism, it just sort of was very interesting to see sort of these thoughts I had as a child and as a young adult that really made sense to me. And I always preface this saying too, like, what works for me works for me. And I don't think what somebody else does is better or worse, or what I'm doing is better than worse. I think we're all in this world together, and the fact that we can have this wonderful discussion is important. It's an important thing to do.
Yeah, of course. Well, so the next thing I want to talk about, and again, I know we had a conversation and you're in no way an expert, and I have zero information really about this. I haven't done a ton of research because I just wanted to have this conversation and kind of go into it just ready to absorb any information that you had on the topic. But how would you describe the relationship between Judaism and Christianity, and like, what is the similarities maybe between the two?
Well, as I mentioned off the camera, you could literally get an entire PhD on this. But the number one thing is that Jews and Christians and Muslims all believe in one God. And it's an Abrahamic God, and the sort of difference really is, Muslims believe the line started with Ishmael. Jews and Christians believe it's Isaac, and there's that beautiful story of Abraham willing to sacrifice Isaac, and then he's stopped by God, and it's we share that story. And so again, the similarities are so numerous. The fact that we all believe in one God, and the sort of origins of all of that too. Now there's differences in sort of versions of what a Messiah is and what isn't. And Judaism practices different things. Like, Jews generally don't sort of spread the word, so to speak, and then Christianity is very much it's about spreading the word. And so there's just differences in little things like that, but so many similarities again. And I've seen a lot of really beautiful sort of interfaith dialogue just in my years in Los Angeles and in Winnipeg, and just seeing these communities, particularly the Jewish and the Christian world, really working together and creating wonderful communities and dialogues.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head by saying that it is true. It's all the same God. There's that same belief kind of at the top. And there's way more, I think, that makes similar, then that is a difference, right? Then there is difference between some of those major religions that you just mentioned.
Yep. And again, learning about them, I've participated in many things over the years. I sang for a long time in a Jewish choir in Los Angeles, and part of our year was doing interfaith services and having rabbis speak and having ministers or priests speak, and just really learning and accepting that we're all really in this world together, and that and we should really just focus on similarities instead of worrying about what people think is correct or not correct. It's not as black. It's not black and white like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, so this video is obviously going to be premiering on Sunday afternoon for our virtual youth group, but we're connecting on Friday today, which I think is a very important day in the Jewish faith. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
It is. It's sort of, they call it the most important and best Jewish holiday. In Judaism, there's a lot of holidays that are, from Rosh Hashanah, which is the New Year, to Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement. They have Passover. But Jews talk about their holiday once a week. This is Shabbat. And it's, commanded about how God rested when he created the world. And Jews take that literally and believe that, we should work for 6 days and rest on the seventh day. And in Judaism, that seventh day is Saturday. And so from sundown on Friday night until sundown on Saturday night, it works out to about 25 hours. There's a lot of reasons why. You're supposed to shut everything down. And, that's adjusted over the years. There's different branches of Judaism that see that a bit differently. There's, very religious Orthodox Jews that, won't flip their lights on, and they won't cook, and they won't drive. And then in the more liberal denominations, I happen to be a member of what's called a conservative denomination, which is, sort of in the middle. And, they encourage you to attend synagogue, but only drive to go to the synagogue, and try not to drive doing other things. Don't spend money. Don't work. Don't talk about money. Really relax and enjoy it. So tonight, as sunset comes, about 18 minutes before sunset, you light candles, and it brings in the Shabbat. And then the next day, after 25 hours, you are supposed to look up at the sky. And when you see 3 stars, that's when you know that it's ended. And there's beautiful ceremony on either side of that. There's candle lighting and wine drinking and eating bread, dinner with your family on Friday night, Saturday morning, synagogue. Saturday night is called Havdalah, and it's about separating the Shabbat from the week, and people sing and drink wine and smell spices to promote a sweet week. So there's a lot of, what also drew me was a lot of the beautiful customs and traditions that I just find really meaningful.
Yeah, totally. That sounds really cool. And it, like you said, all those traditions and kind of ceremonial things that happen every single week. And it's so important too, I think, just for anybody, like that idea of resting and taking that day. I know sometimes, often you take it as a day off from, social media and off from phones and calls and things like that. And that probably must feel really good too.
It is. And I think it's not even a Jewish concept. I think the entire world could really benefit from just taking some time off to breathe. As you know, I don't get too far without my phone next to me.
Right.
And, it's become sort of not an addiction, but it's become like a crutch, that this idea that we have all this access at that moment. And really, there's a quote about Shabbat that I think is actually really beautiful. And it's talking about, it says, this is written by a rabbi, Abraham Joshua Heschel. He lived in 1907 to 1972, and he's just a really prolific writer of Jewish text, but he wrote a book called The Sabbath. And it's all about that idea. And it says, 6 days a week, we wrestle with the world, wringing profit from the earth. On the Sabbath, we especially care for the seed of eternity planted in the soul. So, really take that time to, engage with yourself and God, or whatever, and just shut down, take a breath. And I think, so that you have something left to give when the next week starts.
Yeah, well, and he said that long before cell phones, so I can't even imagine what he would be thinking now.
There is, and it's funny, Tyler, because there is lots of, as the world changes, Jewish law, there's what they call mitzvot, and there's 613 sort of laws that the Jews are supposed to follow. And, most of them are not, they don't have any effect nowadays because it talks about sacrifices in the temples and, from ancient times. But some of the things, don't work, don't use electricity, don't light a fire. But what's happened is denominations of Judaism have had to adjust because of things like, is the cell phone electricity? It's not really, it's a battery, So
yeah,
in great Jewish tradition, there's a lot of discussion and a lot of really well thought out answers to modern problems. So my community, we are allowed to drive. They prefer you just drive to your synagogue, but they feel it's more important to connect with your community in your synagogue than being stuck at home. So,
right.
but the cell phone, I think, is still controversial. I think we can all agree that one day a week we should all get rid of them.
Not a bad idea. Another concept I think of Jewish religion that people are maybe have heard of but are not familiar with exactly the concept of is a bar mitzvah. I think that word gets tossed around. You hear it in movies, you hear it in pop culture, and what exactly is a bar mitzvah for those who maybe aren't familiar?
Yes, so the plural version or the egalitarian version of it is called a b'nai mitzvah. And because a bar mitzvah refers to a male, and then they have what's called a bat mitzvah, which refers to females. And so when a Jewish boy turns 13, he becomes bar mitzvah. And, we often think, and when a girl, depending on the denomination, when she's 12, because I think women are just generally more advanced than men in so many ways. And so they decide that when some denominations, when girls turn 12 and boys turn 13, they become bar mitzvah. And the thought of it is people think of just some gigantic party and almost like a birthday or a wedding, which is a more modern invention. But the day that a boy wakes up on his 13th birthday, he is what they call bar mitzvah. He is an adult in the world of Judaism. And there's a ceremony and he's able to take on responsibilities as an adult that you can only do when you are bar or bat mitzvah, like reading the Torah, there's these wonderful prayer, they're called tefillin that Jews pray with, and you tie them on. And so you can wear a prayer shawl. It's this idea that you are considered a Jewish adult, and then you are able to participate and as an adult. And so, it's become this wonderful rite of passage for Jewish teenagers, and often is coincided with a big family party. And now they are Zoom. I was at a Zoom bat mitzvah in Los Angeles last Saturday, and it's just great. The kids learn. They do readings and prayers. They lead the service generally in Hebrew, and it's really incredible. And they study for years. They go to Sunday schools. It's a little different than Christian Sunday school, but it's the same concept. Is you learn all of this, and they are taught from a very young age, and then by the time they are bar or bat mitzvah, they are ready to take on these responsibilities.
Very cool. So on a more serious note, I guess, and it's obviously no secret to anybody, and because it's in the media, it's online, and anti-Semitism is still very, very prevalent in today's society, unfortunately. And it's, I think, sometimes often something we think that we're going to just read about in a history book about, the Second World War and about the Holocaust, especially. And it's obviously been an ongoing issue before and after. But I think my question is, what is your thoughts on it still happening today? Why do you think it's still happening today? And how do we move forward from that happening in 2021 still?
That's it's a very good question, and one that I don't really have the answer for. But what I will say is it was something that was always there and is still there. And it's troubling. It's extremely troubling, especially when you see extreme acts of violence committed against Jewish people. A couple of years ago, I was in New York, and I went to a Shabbat service in the Upper West Side of New York City, and it was the day that there was the terrible shooting in Pittsburgh, and I found about it walking back to my hotel, and I saw it in a store window, and it kind of, my heart just broke, because it was exactly the same thing. They were meeting for their services, and somebody came in and took the life of many people. And I've just seen it in my life as synagogues in Los Angeles now building walls. My synagogue in California, we didn't have a wall and a gate, and we do now. And it's because of stories like that, and how there are a lot of people in the world that have hate, and I don't understand it, and I can't claim to understand that, but I can only imagine with dialogue and open discussion that people, I'm hoping that it will change. I don't know. It's such a devastating thing when you see anybody having their life taken away because of something they believe by somebody that doesn't believe that. It's very troubling, and there's been a major uprising in that, and I won't get into politics too much, but there almost seems to be a feeling that people have a little more leeway with their hate now, because it's becoming more open. But what somebody described to me was, with the invention of social media, all it did was expose. It's not worse. It's just people are being exposed. And so in a way, that's
Right.
a blessing, because we can actually physically see what's happening. I think when you only heard about it or whatever, but now people just have a forum for their hate. And so I just pray and hope that, with outreaches and things like this, that people can learn to live together a bit better, and that, awful tragedies like shootings in Pittsburgh and in California, like stuff like that doesn't happen. It's all over Europe. And so I just do the best I can to be the person I am and talk to people and try and listen to their stories, and hope that with stuff like this, people can change their mind.
Yeah, and I think what you said is so important, is the dialogue, right? Having those conversations. Knowledge is power, again, like you said at the beginning. Understanding more. I think often people fear the unknown, or fear things they don't understand. And that fear sometimes becomes, hate speech or violence. And I think that you're right, like having these kind of conversations, being open to have the conversations about what your faith means to you, and how, like we said, it's not that different, than your faith or my faith or another faith, and that there is more that brings us together, and kind of trying to recognize those aspects of it, as opposed to, what separates us.
And also too, what I will say, you just touched on knowledge, but the fact that also scares me a lot is just how much misinformation is out there. I remember a few years ago, I was at work, and I happened to start on I don't even remember what the original story was, but it was some sort of hate crime. And just following links from like a major news source to, this other news article, to this Twitter, to this, and within 3 or 4 clicks, I was in the most disgusting part of Twitter that was the most vile, racist, anti-Semitic. And so the scary thing is that some people read that and believe that. And so knowledge is power, but I think we need to start working on getting the correct information out there, because there are people that read it as fact. I mean, we just saw an entire election in the United States, which we won't talk about this, but so much misinformation spread via internet and social media.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you shut it all down, but that's very scary to me, is just the access to the hate speech that people can get, and therefore not thinking for themselves. So that's something that needs to be discussed in the future.
Yeah, well, and like you said, that misinformation, when it starts from the top, it is very hard to contain. It is very hard to regulate. And it's a hard expectation to then expect other people to have the correct information when, you know, maybe the misinformation is starting at the highest level of power. So that can be challenging.
It is challenging. And so it's this idea of I try my very best when I read something to back it up and make sure that it's correct. And, you know, I just watched a whole documentary on social media and how fake information spreads much quicker than real information. And so that also isn't helping. But again, do I have an answer? I don't know. It's something that I think is being discussed and needs to be discussed further.
Very complex. I think so. My last question, just to kind of wrap up, would be, why don't you share with us just like some of maybe your favorite practices or your favorite traditions of Judaism, whatever that is to you, that mean the most to you or that have some sort of, you know, sentimental value to you?
Well, there's so many beautiful things. And as a singer, one thing that really drew me to Judaism and continues to engage with me is that so much of people's voices are used in prayer and in, like, you know, even when they read from the Torah, it's sung. There's a specific way of singing it. Mm-hmm. And so to me, it's not just as a singer, but you know, singing is breathing and singing is life. And it's sort of like your soul. And you're a singer too. You understand this, that when you sing, I feel like you're connected to God. You're connected, you know, they say it's like connecting to the angels. Mm-hmm. And so I love that. That's something that I really love. And I've actually spent the last number of years doing as many workshops as I can in Jewish liturgy and learning this sort of music. They call it nusach, which is melodies for certain parts of prayer and parts of the services. And it's extremely beautiful and extremely complex because you sing it. In Judaism, there's 3 prayers a day that you do, 3 services a day that you can do, and it sounds different depending on what time of the day it is. You should know during the holidays, there's different. So cantors who lead a lot of the services, they're extremely well versed, and a lot of this stuff is ancient, and it goes back. People don't even know how long. So I think when I'm there, having not grown up in this, there's something really beautiful about feeling a connection to something that goes way beyond me or my genetics or my DNA. And there's this beautiful thought that when Moses received the 10 Commandments at Mount Sinai, that every Jew in the world was present there, physically and the ones to come. And so it's just beautiful things like that that I love. But number one, it's the music, it's the singing, and being able to connect on a deeper level using your voice.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks so much again to Kevin for sharing today what being Jewish means to him. Like we've said in many of our past episodes, it is so important to continue to educate yourself. Read new stories, talk to new people, watch new videos about something that you've never heard about or something that you've never taken the time to explore. I hope that over the next few months, we can explore new and exciting topics together. I will continue to bring you new special guests who are going to share their story, their expertise, and their personal experiences from a variety of different topics. As Kevin mentioned in his video, singing and music is such a huge part of the Jewish faith. It's also such a huge part of his life. Before we go, I want to share a really special video that Kevin shared with me a few months back.
Be the light, be the light. When darkness surrounds us and we can't tell black from white, be the light, be the light. Each candle that we kindle calls on us to be the light.
At this chilly time of year, the wind blows harsh and cold, and daylight disappears while darkness takes its hold. We tell the ancient story of the Maccabees' brave fight, but today their task is in our hands. We all must be the light.
Be the light.
Be the light. Be the light. When darkness surrounds us. Be the light. Be the light.
Each candle that we kindle calls on us to be the light. History has taught us that tyrants feed on fear, but as long as we are ready to stand and persevere,
When we use our strength and power to stand up for what's right, every waking hour has got to be the light.
be the light.
Be the light. Be the light. When darkness surrounds us. Be the light. Be the light.
Candle that we kindle calls on us to be the light.
Our enemies know well that power is quite fleeting. As long as truth and courage in our hearts and souls are beating, justice path is twisted. We've got to hold on tight to our faith, 'cause we've insisted that we always be the light.
Be the light.
Be the light. Be the light. When darkness surrounds us. Be the light. Be the light.
Candle that we kindle calls on us to be the light.
Be the light. Be the light. When darkness surrounds us and we can't tell black from white. Be the light. Be the light. Each candle that we kindle calls on us to be the light.
Well, that's everything for today. Thanks again for joining us at the St. Saviour's virtual youth group. My name is Tyler, and if you haven't already, click that subscribe button, hit the bell icon so that you never miss one of our videos. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Stay safe, stay home, and have a great week.